Hello everybody, Hexon here with Hexlocke Gaming. Today we have a treat for you. Recently, Pokemon's Gold beta version, Pokemon sprites there got leaked out, and the internet being the internet, everybody went in and data mined it, and we found out the sprites of the original designs of Pokemon Gen 2. Now here we have a sprite sheet along with the names of the Generation 2 Pokemon that were originally in its beta design. Here we'll just take a quick look at it, share it with everybody on YouTube. As we can see, we have first the Chikorita line. The name was different. It was just called Leaf. The second evolution actually was a lot different than Bayleaf as we know it today. It looks more like a small Pokemon sprouting from a flower and then eventually it evolves into Meganium. They probably thought that the design team thought it was just too inconsistent, so they changed it into just like a bigger Chikorita with leaves on it and called it Bayleaf. Next we have the what was before the Cyndaquil line, Flame Bear, and then into Volbear and Dynabear. So it looks to be a bear type Pokemon, a mammal. Before Cyndaquil, it's a fire type, obviously, the fire starter, but they redesigned that and created Cyndaquil, which is more like a porcupine type. Next we have the water starter, the original design. It looks to be based off the Loch Ness Monster with a smaller like lizard type, slowly getting bigger into what looks to be like the Loch Ness Monster right here in Aquaria. It does have a longer neck, the fin, the tail, and then like what looks to be like a little orb around its neck. Next we have Hoothoot right over here. Hoothoot stays almost exactly the same. The name didn't change. But however, Noctowl, it was known as Hoo-Hoo before. Noctowl was a lot sleeker, looked a lot more menacing than it does now. Still big round, but still stood on 1 feet as well, like Hoo-Hoo did. Next we have the Mareep, Flaffy, and Ampharos. Flaffy and Ampharos, name didn't change. However, Mareep was known as Bassbark before. The design overall still is the same. Ampharos just loses the wool, but Flaffy and Mareep were mostly untouched, maybe a little color differences in the brush up. Next, we have what we see a lot of in this list, which is baby Pokemon. As we know in Gen 2, they introduced the baby forms of such like Pikachu. We got like Jigglypuff's baby form, but as we can see here, there's a lot more baby types that seems to have been considered when they were developing, but then they decided to scrap for whatever reason. This one, Trifox here, is clearly the baby form of Vulpix. Vulpix having 6 tails, Ninetales obviously having 9, and Trifox having 3. Next we have what looks to be the pre-evolution of Tangle, an eyeball with a bunch of vines starting to grow on its head before it fully covers it, and then Galanla actually, which seems to be the evolution of Tangela. So they were planning on a 3-stage. Tangle doesn't look to be a baby Pokemon, so they were probably planning just to make it a full 3-stage Pokemon. Next looks to be like Rayleap. It has a really cool design from what looks to be facing it. From the bottom, it's really bright. However, from the back or the top, it's really dark. Has that difference there, dichotomy. It does have what looks to be like a facial design, probably to ward off predators. This one, it's really cool. I really wish they made it into the game. Even today, we don't have anything. Maybe the Togepi Final Evolution actually is based off it, or they probably designed Rayleap into Mantine because it's clearly it looks like it's based off of Ray, Manta Ray. So. That's what it is. Next we have Babble, which is Quillfish. Quillfish didn't have too much of a difference between Babble, so aside from the name change. Next to be Quillfish's evolution. It looks like it's actually was originally planned to be an electric water type, as you could probably see on its forehead right here. It has like an electric mark, probably based off like some kind of electric eel, but it's not really an eel, so maybe some type of fish that produces electricity. And next, as we slowly go down, next we have Pichu, the pre-evolution of Pikachu. Before it didn't have a body, it's just a head with some arms and legs, which as we can see as well with Cleffa and Igglybuff. Cleffa, mostly unchanged except its head has more of like those alien antennas, tried to base it off aliens, much like how they tried to pass off Clefairy. It came from came from the moon, from outer space. Igglybuff, it doesn't really have the puff in its original design, so it's a lot more ballish. But then they decided to add that on. Next is Lancefish, which is now known as Quagsire. Uh, we don't have Wooper, so they probably didn't decide to add in Wooper until later in the game. Next we have Natu and Xatu, mostly unchanged, how so it is. Next is Gulpy, probably based off the Guppy pre-evolution or the baby form of Goldeen. Clearly, it did not make it into the game, but it still had the horns, it had the eyes, so just a little goldfish with a horn, much like Goldeen's is. Next is Meryl. As we know now, Meryl today is blue. It's a water type. Maybe before it was, they decided to keep it as a normal type, much like Meryl's baby form. But it was definitely pink before, as we saw. We do have pictures from the past of its pre-development. Next, we have Sunmola and Anchorage. Now, these two, it doesn't look like they made it into the game, and it doesn't look like they got redesigned into any current gen that we know of, at least in Gen 2. We have a shark with an anchor for its tail. Maybe they decide to hold off on it and then change it over to the shark Pokemon in Generation 3. I can't remember its name for some reason right now. And now we got Grotesque, which is based off the Gulper eel, along with having a little flashlight on its head to attract prey. This probably got remade into Lantern, and then it's also pre-evolution Chinchou. Grotesque just probably didn't fit into the entire game design. Next is Xing, which is Crobat. Overall, the design is still the same. Next is just Para, without the sect. So Para is the baby form of Paris. It's a little bug living on top of the mushroom, and as we learn from its Pokédex entries and for Paris and Parasect, the mushroom slowly grows over its body, takes over. The bug becomes a zombie, and then the mushroom is actually controlling everything. Next is Spidet, which is Spinarak, and then Two-Head, which is Ariados. Spinarak still looks like how it is today. However, Ariados has a much cuter design. Today's Ariados is a lot more menacing. However, on its back, it does have that scary face, much like Spinarak. Armorock, Skarmory, unchanged from now. Next is Animan. Not sure what this is. It looks like they were trying to make like an amoeba type Pokemon. I'm not sure what it correlates to today. Maybe it's just a single stage Pokemon that they decided not to add in. Maybe a pre-evolution to Ditto, I'm not sure, or an evolution to Ditto. But Animan sounds like a Digimon name, actually, like a Digimon baby form instead. Maybe they just passed it on to Digimon. Next is Chix. Looks to be pre-evolution of Doduo, the baby form. It didn't make it into the final stages, probably because it has 3 heads. Doduo has 2 heads, and then when it evolves into Dodrio, it has 3 again. So I don't know how somewhere along its line it lost a head and then grew another one when it evolved. Who knows? And then we have Sunny, which is Sunflora. Doesn't look like it changed too much. They just decided to add in Sunkern as its pre-evolution. Next is Trumpet, which is Phanpy. Looks like how it is today. A little cuter, smaller body, but they brushed it up, fattened it up a little bit. Donphan, exactly the same as what it is. I don't think this art changed at all from what I remember in my gold version. Donphan looks exactly the same. Next is Twins. Looks to be like a ghost type Pokemon. Maybe a split evolution for the Ghastly line from Ghastly into 2, because it does have the floating hands. So maybe when 2 Ghastlys joined together, they evolved into twins. Who knows, but they didn't make it into the game. Maybe they got it reworked into Mischievous, which is the only new ghost Pokemon to be introduced in Generation 2. Next is Giraffridge. Giraffridge back then had 2 full heads instead of the main head and then the smaller tail, which acts as the second head. Its color is still the same, yellow on one side, black on the other. Next we got Paintern, which is Smeargle today. The design is still the same as it is. Next is Meowsy, which is the baby form of Meowth. As we can see, they have the 3 little coins floating above it, as well as it still has the little coin on top of its head. Meowsy didn't make it in as one of the baby Pokemon. Next is Ring Ring and Belvoyant, which is another cat line Pokemon with Bells for its tails, they did not make it, and it doesn't look like they got redesigned into anything we have today. Next, Polytoad, the split evolution for Poliwag into Poliwhirl, and then it could become Poliwrath or Polytoad. Polytoad's design back then, a lot more like a frog, but then the current Polytoad's a lot more cartoonish. Has the webbed feet instead of the more like a flappy kind. It stands more straight up than sitting like a frog. Next, we have Slowking. Design remains mostly unchanged. Unknown, we got Unknown D, the same as what we have now, and then Unknown A, which also is the same. Next, we got Lediba and Tripstar. These do not look like they evolve into each other. They look like just two separate bug-type Pokemon, much like how Scyther and Pinsir was. But then they probably reworked Tripstar into Ledian, and then we have, because Ledian currently is known as the 5-star Pokemon, I believe, and as we can see on Tripstar's back, we have the 5-pointed stars. So Lediba probably got reworked into evolving into Ledian. Next, we got Minicorn, which is the baby form of Ponyta, just a smaller Ponyta, not too much difference in design. Then we have Espeon and Umbreon. Design is mostly unchanged, though the original Umbreon was going to be a poison type EV evolution, but then they reworked it into the new dark type that they were introducing. Next, we got Turban, which seems to be just a shell of Slowbro, the tail parts that decide not to bite on anymore. It doesn't look like this is an evolution line of Slowpoke, because Slowpoke already evolves into either Slowbro or Slowking. This might be the split evolution line of Shelder, actually, because as we know, Shelder and Slowpoke has more, not more of a symbiotic relation. It's actually more of like a parasitic relationship. But maybe Shelder decided to can either evolve into Cloyster or Turban here, so maybe that's the split evolution. Next, we have Grimy, baby form of Grimer. And then we have Remoraid and Octillery. Artillery, based off of artillery cannons, had a helmet, and Remoraid was designed much to look like a Magnum with like a revolver with the shells that you could put in the back here. But the current design, they do have the tail. Next, we have Gong, which looks to be the original Tyrogu. It had the boxing gloves, the big ears. Clearly today Tyrogu is a lot different. Maybe this Gong got reworked into Teddiursa because Teddiursa is a bear with the big ears evolving into Ursaring. And here we got the original Hitmontop. Looks much more like a Dragon Quest character, Dragon Quest monster than a Pokemon. It has 3 legs instead of current design, which is 2 legs and a tail. It had 1 eye, but it still spun on its head. So they brushed it out, made it a little more child-friendly for the Hitmontop. Next, we got Pooty, which is Growlithe's baby form. So cute. Unfortunately, they didn't make it through. Growlithe, as we know, is the equivalent of Vulpix in blue and red. You could either get Vulpix in one, and then you get Growlithe in the other, and you have to trade between them. So because of the fact that Vulpix did not make it through Vulpix pre-evolution, Growlithe did not as well. They try to keep everything balanced between the two. Next, we got the Hoppip line. Hoppip into Skiploom and then Jumpluff. Hoppip more or less stayed the same. It still had the little grassy head piece. They don't have the tail anymore, but then eventually Jumpluff got drastically reworked. Jumpluff has the pom-poms as opposed to Cotton Mew, which has the cotton on its head. Next, we got Ballerine, which looks to be Mr. Mime's pre-baby evolution. Baby form. It has that like Joker hat, round body, arms, legs, not too much, but now we have Mime Jr. Next is Lip, pre-evolution to Jinx, and then we got Ella Baby, which is the baby form of Electabuzz, now known as Ellaby, I believe. Shortened up the name a little bit. Ellaby was designed to be more like Lightning Rod, but today's design, they have it as one of those electric plugs. Next, we got Magby. Its head was a lot more spiky, but today they've rounded it out. Other than that, Magby's design is more or less the same. Next, we have over here Bellossom. So Bellossom back then, much like how Vileplume was designed to be black, its sprites always had a black face. Bellossom as well, but as it grew, Vileplume became a lot more purple, and Blossom had a green face. And as we know, Blossom was the split evolution option for Gloom, so we went from Oddish to Gloom, and then into Vileplume, which is the Leafstone evolution, and Blossom, which is the Sunstone. And then to balance it out, they were going to create what looks to be the split evolution to the Bellsprout line. From Bellsprout into Weepinbell, it probably has, well, it had the same thing. Instead of a Leafstone, you give it a Sunstone, and then you have Belmet here. Clearly, Belmet just does not look really good, so they probably just scrapped that idea. Next, we got Miltank. Miltank remains unchanged. And then we got Bomb Seal. So it looks to be a fire-type seal to be dichotomized with the Seal, which is an ice water type from the first. So maybe this was a fire water type instead. But they decide to forgo that idea. It doesn't have an evolution. It's just a standalone, as we can see in the sprites. Next, we got Gift, which is today's Delibird. Overall, the design is more or less the same. It has more of a beard look to it. So it has the Santa hat and as well as the gift bag. Next we got is Tigret into Elect Tiger. It's an electric tiger Pokemon that did not make it in. What most likely happened is they reworked it into what we know as Raikou today. As we can see further down, Raikou's design here is a lot different than today's design. So when Tigret didn't pass, they probably reworked that into current Raikou. Next is Madam, which is the evolution that was planned for Farfetch'd. It has what looks to be a baton, a more swan-like Pokemon. Maybe it has the water element added to it, kind of like Swanna today. But Farfetch'd still doesn't have an evolution. Next we got is Kerstraw and Pangshi, two Pokemon that did not make it through. The Kerstraw looks like it's based off of Voodoo dolls with its pike in it. Probably this is where the original Curse ability came from, where in the animation it's always stabbing itself. Probably it was, most likely it's its signature move if it did make it into the game. Probably a ghost type as well. Next, Pangshi. Looks like a bear, but it's based off the Chinese mummy where they use talismans to control. They actually hop around on 2 feet, and they're shown in a lot of anime, actually. A lot of like yokai anime. We see them a lot. Next is Murkrow. Design is mostly the same, aside from its headpiece. It looks a lot more like a witch's hat, but now it's currently it's straighter. And then we have Happy, which is now Blissey, the evolution of Chansey. It has 2 egg pouches, as we can see right here, and then its head has a heart headpiece design. Other than that, it still has like the roundish body. Probably still carries normal type Pokemon. Next we have Scizor. It was green back in the day instead of red. Its wings looked a lot like Scyther's wings instead of having like an armor piece covering it up. But other than that, Scizor's design is more or less still the same. From the back, its head still looks kind of like a Scyther. Because in today's Scizor, it doesn't really have too much of a mouth to open. So back then, it still had kind of like that dragonish look to it. Next is Pluck. This was originally planned to be Pinsir's evolution. However, they decided to not go through with it and rework it into probably most likely Heracross. Heracross being the Hercules beetle. And then it became the new rival for Pinsir, because the duality between the two. Next is Duval and Houndoom, or Houndour and Houndoom, mostly unchanged. The design is still the same as today. Next is Wolfman and Warwolf. So it looks like they decided to try to create a wolf type or werewolf type Pokemon. Clearly it didn't fall through. It didn't make it into the final cut. So these two got left out. Next is Porygon 2, a lot different than what we know it as today. It looks much like a stuffed lion. It looks kind of like Hone from the Bleach series, if anyone watched that anime. But today's Porygon looks a lot better. It looks like it should have evolved from regular Porygon, or at least upgraded, since it's actually a computer program. Next, we got Lick, which is probably the evolution of Lickitung. It doesn't look like a baby form at all. This obviously didn't make the cut. However, now we have Licky Licky, so there we go. Next, we have Steelix. Steelix, unchanged. So, yep. And then we got Kingdra. Kingdra's design is a lot cooler than it is today. It has a really older look to it, but back then it looked a lot more like a dragon. Has like the dragon whisker, spiky head, the wings, and everything. And then we come up again to the legendary dogs. We got Rai, An, and Sui, which is Raiko, Entei, and Suicune. Before they definitely looked a lot more like dogs. We always called it legendary dogs as kids, until their names officially is the legendary beasts. Raiko had like a Super Saiyan design in its hair. Entei looks just like a fire dog. It doesn't look too special. It doesn't look like it should be a legendary, so I can see how they overall redesign each one of them to have like the more majestic look to it, and have like the floating clouds on each of their backs, as well as the like a cooler tail to it. Next we have Sneasel. Sneasel here is looks to be more of a normal type than actually a dark ice type, but they really reworked it here. Probably they wanted more ice type Pokemon as well as more dark type, so they reworked Sneasel as more of a like a sneaky evil type, because dark in Japanese is actually the evil type. And then we got Ho-Oh. No Lugia, but we do have Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh was in development since the first generation, so they probably just brushed it up a little bit, but not too much has changed since then. And then we got Togepi here, unchanged. Snubble as well, also unchanged. And then we got Tail, which seems to be the precursor to Aipom. It looks more like a cat-type Pokemon back then with its cat-like ears, but then they redesigned it to be more like a monkey. And then we do have Leafeon. So they were probably planning on 3 EV evolutions, just like Gen 1. It was probably going to be Umbreon, which was originally planned to be a poison type, and then you got Leafeon, which is grass. Poison does beat grass, and Espeon, which was yellow back in the day, so not too sure what they were originally planning for Umbreon to be. I'm not sure, out of like maybe ground type, who knows, or maybe they just kept it at psychic type. So, and then Celebi is nowhere to be seen, so Celebi probably was made later in development as the 251st Pokemon. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed. This is got a lot of interesting news, fan arts, and people trying to remake them into what they will look like today. It's really awesome. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time.